Okay, should we get started?
Yep, I'm ready.
All right, so here's our capstone project for Massman Automation Design LLC.
Hi, I'm Brianna. I'm studying industrial engineering and management, and I'll be graduating in May.
I'm Mitchell Cramer. I'm a senior of manufacturing engineering. I'll be also graduating in May.
I'm Tyler Larson. I'm a senior in industrial engineering and management, and I'll also be graduating in December.
And I'm Rose McNamee. I'm also a senior in industrial engineering and management, and I will also be graduating in December.
So just going over agenda real quick. So we'll go over a quick background of the company, which will also include a short video. We'll go over our project approach, any assumptions that we had to make, any roadblocks that were found during the project, current state, as well as two future state solutions, one a short-term, the other a long-term solution. We'll make some final recommendations for our implementation plan. We'll do a quick recap, and then we'll take any questions you got. So brief history of Massman Automation. It's a custom automated packaging solution company founded in 1978 in Villard, Minnesota. They serve a wide variety of industries for their packaging systems. So consumer products, dairy, custom applications, filtration, manufacturing, food and beverage industry, and then also pharmaceuticals. These are all made to order systems. So every machine is different. They don't have any set design for any products. They also provide aftermarket support for their products. So here's a quick video. This is a butter packaging system. So as you can pretty much see, the butter is loaded from the front where it's sorted, and then it's layered. It's kind of hard to see in this, but it's layered. Okay, here it is. It's layered, which with each new, I guess you could say, pallet put on top. So after this, it'll be brought over and then loaded from the bottom into the box. There's a better view for it. So afterwards, the box will be removed, brought over for sealing, and then another box will also be brought to replace it. And that's pretty much it. So a little bit of a background for our project. The overview was to evaluate and outline the flow of raw materials, find and understand the current state issues, and then develop a future state of the process with costs associated. And then for our deliverables was a process map of the current state, a process map for the future state of what our plan is to be, and then an estimated external and internal and external costs, and then project plans to implement. So Brianna's gonna, oh wait, my bad. The project approach. So we had some site visitations where we toured the facility to get an overview of an entire process of raw material locations. We conducted interviews with employees directly involved with the raw material process to get a better understanding of the current state. We mapped the current state process for each raw material location, analyzed, discussed any problems associated with the current state, and then decide on what solutions best fit the needs of the company to, and develop these solutions. And then we created an implementation plan for our improvements. So Brianna is going to move on with the project.
So throughout our project, some assumptions had to be made, and these include when raw material arrives, it's remeasured, and those measurements are entered into the ERP system, so they have accurate numbers within the ERP system. Bar stock arrives only on Wednesdays. All material is placed in the correct racking. There are over 1,200 different variations of raw material within this warehouse, And lastly, all raw material workstations have computers. Some roadblocks that we ran into throughout the project included the lack of quantifiable data, understanding the multiple steps in the raw material process, current lack of documentation at Massman Automation, and the distance to visit. Next, we'll walk through the current state of the raw material process flow. For the sake of the project, we decided to split the raw material process into 3 different sections: the KOMO, sheet metal, and bar stock. Each of these areas directly use and document raw material within the process. We analyzed these 3 locations and interviewed the experts in each area to create process maps. The sheet metal area and KOMO process were nearly identical, so we grouped them together into one process map. This is the full process map for those 2 areas. The process starts with the need to order raw material. Then it goes into the ordering process of that raw material, the placement of the material, and lastly, the use and documentation of the material. One main area of focus was knowing when to order step. Currently, there are 3 ways to know when to order new raw material. These include the operator has a gut feeling to order more, or Chuck either notices stock is low, or he knows the upcoming demand for a project for that type of material. Another area of focus was the documentation of used material. If scrap occurs and it is not useful for another piece or a part is machined incorrectly, then the square dimensions is put into the drop list. This drop list includes unused material, and Aaron picks this up and documents it into the ERP system about a couple times every day. For parts that are machined correctly, Aaron picks up the bill of materials at the end of the day to enter the square dimensions into the ERP system. So here are some pictures. The upper left-hand corner picture is the KOMO area. Below that just shows a quick bill of materials with the required square footage. This middle picture shows where the bill of materials that are done are put, and that's where Aaron picks up the bill of materials to enter into the ERP system. The upper right-hand corner picture is that of the drop list, which includes the part number, the part type, as well as the square footage used, and then the initials of the person that entered this into the drop list. And then the bottom picture is a picture of storage for sheet metal. The next process we'll look at is that of bar stock. So one area that's different is this upper portion from the KOMO and sheet metal areas. The bar stock operators receive their bill of materials, and if they cannot find the correct material for their assignment, then they fill out a material shortage request. These documents are picked up every morning by Chuck, and that's just another way for them to know when to order more material. So here are a couple pictures of the current storage area for all the bar stock raw material. It is organized by shape, size, and material as shown here. Some of the notable issues that we observed while creating the current state process flows included there were unnecessary steps in the documentation process, mistakes and scrapped material is often not recorded by the operators, and if it is, Aaron has trouble reading the drop list since it's all manual. All of their documentation occurs on paper, which can be misplaced and lost very easily. Quantities are not tracked, just square dimensions. So square dimensions for bar stock instead of a full bar of stock is tracked. And the demand for material is unknown. They don't know 100% when to order new material. So next, Tyler will go over our future state recommendations for the raw material process flow.
So for the future state, we wanted to solve some of the current issues that we're presented with. So we kind of came up with 2 separate Excel files to kind of help better track with the raw material process. So the first one we're going to show you is the Excel data entry form. And basically what this is going to be used, it's an Excel sheet that's going to be used for storing information on material usage. It's going to track all the material usage, such as scrap or the used material. It's going to basically replace that manual drop list, which operators had to write down everything. It's going to be using Excel macros. It's going to help create a simpler user interface versus having to type everything manually in the columns, which is going to take a lot longer. The newest entries are going to be listed at the top, and they're also timestamped, which is going to make things easier for Aaron to see what materials used and scrapped on which day. So this is really going to help with Aaron not having to come down on the production floor and having to pick up those material sheets every single day. And then the second Excel file we presented was the Excel online inventory list. This consists of 4 spreadsheets that will go into more detail later. It consists of the items list, incoming raw material, outgoing raw material, and inventory spreadsheets. And they can be used at the KOMO and sheet metal locations. The reason why we did not do it at the bar stock location is just due to the fact that the bar stock has a large number of item numbers, especially with just flat bars, rods, tubing. There's just so many different types of material to make things a lot more complicated. So we just did the KOMO and sheet metal. And basically, this is going to help track physical inventory, see how many sheets are being used versus everything currently just being tracked in total square inches. And this will also help signal when more material is needed, kind of give a better idea on demand. So now we'll go into a little bit with the actual spreadsheets. The first spreadsheet is the items list spreadsheet. It just consists of the item number and raw material description. And basically, this is going to be used to help reference for the other 3 spreadsheets. And this spreadsheet's only used when you need to enter in a brand new item number that is a material that's never been used before. Chuck sent us an email and gave us a list of all the current item numbers and raw material descriptions they have. So this is already updated. The only time the operator would need to use this spreadsheet is if there's a brand new material that they've never used before. So the incoming, outgoing material spreadsheets consist of the same 3 columns. So the incoming raw material is going to be any raw material that arrives in the facility and is put on the rack. So the operator would just type in the item number, and then because of that items list spreadsheet, the raw material description is already going to appear. So they don't have to type that in again, and then they would just enter the quantity that it arrives in. So then for the outgoing material spreadsheet, it's the same exact thing. Whatever's being used for a job, they would type in that item number. The raw material description would already appear, and then they would enter the quantity of sheets that would be used for that job. And then the last sheet is the inventory spreadsheet. So again, they would type in that item number, and then that raw material description will already appear. And the received quantity is the running total of quantity from that incoming raw material spreadsheet. The issued quantity is the running total for that item number from the outgoing raw material spreadsheet, kind of give you a better idea on demand. And then stock on site is the difference between the two. This is the actual amount of material that is on the rack at any given time. And then the reorder quantity can be set by the operator. So basically, this is the minimum number of sheets that the operator needs before they say they should order more material. So as you can see, since they set the reorder quantity 1 for the item number 50628, since there's 10 in stock, it's not highlighted because 10 is greater than 1. But in the case for all these other item numbers, there is none on stock. So they're highlighted in red to help signal to the operators that they need more material. So now I'm going to show you a little bit of cost benefit analysis between the two. We just kind of compared these solutions versus the norm if we didn't make any changes at all. So with the online Excel inventory list, some of the benefits we kind of said, it's going to help track the actual physical quantities versus just tracking everything in total square inches. So they can see what's on the rack at any given time. It's going to be tracking that total quantity received and total quantity used for the job, kind of giving a better idea on what they'll know with demand, kind of what materials they use the most often. It allows the operator to have the freedom to set the reorder points when they want to order more material, kind of helping with that demand as well. And then also with the physical inventory, they're not using Excel macros, but they can still use the built-in Excel data entry forms so they can enter everything in that way versus typing everything in columns, which is nice. One of the drawbacks with this is it takes a little bit more training than, say, the Excel drop list, just because there's 4 separate spreadsheets. But we have already made like user guides and implementation plans for each of these that'll be in our final report. That'll kind of help operators learn how to use these. And then so with the online Excel drop list, kind of some of the benefits, real-time data tracking, it's going to remove errors with everything being typed versus everything used to be handwritten. Some of the drawbacks is, big thing with both of these is that there needs to be a computer at each one of the workstations, which they're still working on right now. And I guess one of the biggest benefits with the online Excel drop list is now Erin does not have to walk down the production floor. Everything's done in real time, and she can just access these Excel files online, which is really nice. And the big thing to note with this is the ranking system. We made it on the far right. We made it a priority to say that they should try to use the implement the Excel online drop list first, just because it's easier to implement. And then once they get the hang of that, to implement the physical inventory list as well. So now we're going to show you how the current state changed with these solutions involving at the sheet metal and KOMO locations. So first thing to notice in the far left corner, we eliminated one step at the very beginning. Instead of basing everything off gut feeling, now the operator can just look at that inventory spreadsheet to see if the stock is low, when they should order more material. And also Chuck will still kind of know the upcoming demand for material based on their upcoming projects. So that's one step that will change because of those physical inventory sheets at the beginning. And then after that, after material gets moved and is moved to the correct location for the sheet metal or KOMO locations, then that operator is going to enter that incoming raw material into the incoming raw material spreadsheet. They're going to update that quantity of how many it arrives in. And then after that operator gets the new bill of materials for the new parts, the operator is going to select and enter that outgoing material into the outgoing raw material spreadsheet. Again, typing in that item number, the raw material description is going to already appear, and they'll type in the quantity of sheets that will be used for that job. And then the next part that is highlighted is all involved with the Excel drop list. Now, when scrap occurs, the part is machined incorrectly. The material is going to be scrapped and documented in that Excel drop list. Now, Erin can electronically view this in real time, and she can just input that drop list square footage into the ERP system without going to the production floor at all, which would be really nice. And then the next steps after that is the same way. The operator is going to document that used material, and Erin's going to electronically view the data in real time, and she can just enter that completed square footage into the ERP system, again, without having to go on production floor at the end of the day and getting this material. There won't be any handwriting mistakes that way. So now looking at the bar stock future state, the only thing that changes with this, since we're not using the physical inventory sheets, there's no steps going to be added to the process when material arrives on the racks, things like that. The only thing that will change is just with Excel drop list, again, all used and scrap material is going to be documented on that Excel drop list. She can view this electronically in real time, and she can input into the drop list and complete square footage into the ERP system, again, not having to go on the production floor, which is a big plus. And now Rose will talk to you about the solution involving the barcode system.
Yeah, so our second solution that we wanted to present to Massman is going to be a barcode system. And looking at this cost benefit analysis sheet, I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the different solution options that we have regarding the barcode system. And so that first one on the left column is the Microsoft Dynamics AX without mobiles. And so what this is they currently have Microsoft Dynamics AX as their ERP system. And within that ERP system, they are able to use barcodes for material tracking. And so the cost involved with this one would be for printers, for printing physical barcodes that would have numbers on them. And without mobiles means that each time that they come with the different materials, they would have to type in the part number for each of those materials. And some benefits with this are that it will allow the tracking inventory, which is what their goal ultimately is. They would also have a minimal upfront cost because they are only investing in that one printer that they'll need. It also will require the least amount of training of the three options, just because some people are a little bit familiar with this current ERP system, and it'll still create that bill of materials that they are looking for. And a couple of drawbacks for this option are that it's going to be time consuming to train and use, because while people are sort of familiar with the current ERP system, a lot of people that would be using the barcodes aren't yet familiar with the full functions of it. And another one of those drawbacks will be that it will not improve on the efficiency very well, because if we move from that Excel document, they're still going to have to be physically typing in those numbers. And so it's not going to have a lot of time savings that they're looking for. And so the second option that we have is to use the Microsoft Dynamics AX, which is their current ERP system, with mobile devices. And what this would allow is for them to just scan those barcodes. And so the cost associated with this would be the price of that printer that they would still need to get, but they would also add 5 mobile devices. So that would just be something like a smartphone that they can use as a barcode scanner. And so there's a little bit of a vary in price there, just because for those 5 devices, it can vary depending on where you get them, And so we just gave them a pretty realistic range there. Some benefits with this option will be that it's going to be significantly faster than typing in those barcode part numbers from that first option that we gave. They can still utilize that current system, so there'll still be a bit of that familiarity, as well as it is the best combination of improvement and cost that we found. And then it won't require as much training as completely implementing a new system. And they will also have significant time savings as compared to the first solution. One of the drawbacks, though, is that it is more expensive than the base option that we have at first, but we think that will probably be outweighed by the benefits. And so the independent system, which is our third option, would be completely separate from the current ERP system that they are currently using. And so this system would be solely dedicated to that inventory tracking with barcodes. And so that would include not only the printer, the mobile devices, but it would also include that system itself that they would have to purchase. And so that's why this is the most expensive option, just because they aren't using anything that they currently have. Some benefits of that would be that they would have a system that would be dedicated to inventory tracking. And so that way they could cross-check their inventory with their current ERP system to make sure that their numbers are always aligned. And it may be easier to maintain because you would have people that are solely focused on that inventory tracking instead of on the ERP system itself as a whole. But a few drawbacks of that would be that it is the most expensive option, and it would also take the most time to implement and train their people to use, just because there is no familiarity with it. So with those options, we decided to make a decision matrix to see what would be the best option for Massman. And as you can see, our solutions are at the top, and then we have our decision criteria on the left, and those 5 criteria were the cost, the ease of use, the amount of training required, the time to implement the system, and time saved by using the system. And in the column next to it, you can see how we weighted each of those different things. And so our top priorities for Massman were that the time should be saved and that it should be cost effective. And so when we weighed those different options against each other, we scored in each of the categories, and then we multiplied it by the weight that each of those factors would have. And at the bottom there for the totals, you can see for each ERP, or for each of the systems, that the current ERP system with the mobile devices did seem to be the best option, because it's the best combination of cost savings, time savings, and ease of use for their employees. And so now I'm going to talk to you about the future state of the process map. And so where we're going to begin is that top left at the beginning of the system. And so the way that material can now be ordered with this barcode system is that there can either be a notification from the ERP system to order more material would get sent directly to Chuck. And then Chuck would then verify that they really need this material. They have stuff coming up that they will need this material for. And then he will send out a quote and we'll get it approved for the new material order. Or the other option that could happen is that the system automatically orders new material once the value in the ERP system drops below a certain level. And that would probably be more focused on their materials that they are using every day with every machine that they create, just so that they never run out of high value, high demand materials. And then so next what we're going to show you is when the operator goes to actually use this ERP system or the barcode system when they are doing their job. So the operator would machine the necessary parts, and then to the right, the operator would use the phone scanner to scan the barcode and input the material that they used for those parts into the ERP system, into the barcode system, and so it would automatically track how much they're using then. But if any scrap occurs or the part is machined incorrectly and that material needs to be scrapped, they would also scan that barcode using the phone for that material, and then they would document what was used for scrap. So that way we would just have an accurate running total of how much material they have at any given time. So some of our final recommendations that we want for our intermediate plan, so that first step that we're going to do, the first priority is going to use that Excel drop list that Tyler talked to you about. And then the second priority would be the Excel inventory list. And then eventually we would want to transition into the barcode system with the phone scanners, and that would obviously be implemented as a second step for us. And for implementation, we want to go ahead. Okay. For that implementation plan, our first step, like I said, would be to implement those Excel sheets at the raw material station. And that way we would consider the intermediate plan before the barcode system would be implemented, just because Massman, when we talked to Chuck, he sounded like he would want to do an intermediate step because while they want to do something barcode related eventually, right now he thinks it's more realistic to do something along the lines of the Excel sheet. And then so for the second step that they would want to introduce would be to purchase that material or the necessary equipment for the barcode system, set up the current ERP system to use that tracking of raw materials, and then implement the barcode system at each raw material station. And so that way they could kind of do both at the same time. They could implement those Excel documents while they're trying to get the barcode system ready. And so a little bit of our recap. So today we talked to you about the company background, some background of our project, and how we approached the project. We then talked to you about some of the roadblocks or issues that we faced during our project. And then we talked to you about some data collection that we did and how we went about that. We showed you our current state process maps for those different routes that we used. We also showed you our 2 solutions and the future state of how we would implement those. We showed you our final recommendations and then how we would plan to implement those recommendations. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions here. So when you took a look at the bar stock inventory piece, did you look at what production delays were being caused, if there was any shortages of inventories or anything like that?
So currently they don't track that kind of thing. The only thing they track is at the end of the year, go around and see how much material is left versus how much the ERP system says they have. And those were the only numbers that they have currently. So we never cross-checked that.
So I'm guessing that the assumption was made that they basically never run out. They probably overbuy to make sure they don't run out because they don't have a good gauge of what is currently in inventory. That would be my assumption, and I think it sounds like that's probably where your assumption was lying too.
Yeah, or if they run out of material, then it becomes a problem. And that was one of the problems we're trying to solve, is that they always have the correct amount of material on hand.
Any idea how much excess inventory they have in store there? Does Chuck have any idea? Because that would be another piece that you could put in some of your recommendations and your cost benefit analysis, is the excess inventory that they have to carry because they don't have good tracking of that. Did you look at that at all?
He talked about how they have way too much inventory right now, but he didn't say a specific amount. The one thing that he did note is when they did one of their end of the year checks on one of the materials, one of the sheet metal materials, they were off by over 20 sheets. So currently their tracking is not up to par.
Okay. And then what's your gauge? How do you think the employees are going to adapt to the new electronic system? I'm assuming you visited with them throughout the project, so they kind of knew what was coming and what the direction was. But how do you think most of the employees are going to react to that electronic logging piece of it?
I think the big thing is as long as it doesn't take too much time, like if it doesn't add any extra steps to the process and it doesn't take longer than manually writing down, I think they'll respond well to it. And as long as it's easy to implement, with the data entry forms, typing it in that way is a lot easier than, say, typing it in column by column on a spreadsheet. I don't think that'll be too much of an issue.
And part of the implementation plan on something like this should always be educating the user to the reasons why and the improvements that are going to be gotten by what they're doing, because it's hard for a user to sit down and do something when they don't understand what the benefits are. So always part of your implementation plan and that training plan is trying to convince the employees that are going to be doing the additional work that it's going to be better in the end for everybody. So. always put that in your plan too for the implementation piece. I think that's all the questions I have at this point. So all I would have to say is a good project. I know we struggle a little bit because of the Corona-19 virus, but good project.